What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for, of course, the UFC Vegas 18 recap. Let me just adjust my camera here. But yes, Alexander Volkov destroyed Alistair Overeem, and what was a phenomenal performance there from the Russian on Saturday night back in the UFC Apex empty, of course. And he put on a sublime performance. Now, I do feel Alistair Overeem, with all due respect, didn't show up. We didn't see the Alistair Overeem that thought Rosenstruck or Harris. Actually, might have seen the shades of Overeem that fought Walt Harris in that first round. If you remember, Walt Harris almost finished him very early in that first round, gassed out, and obviously Overeem took the win with his experience. But Overeem, he looked a bit gun shy, although he hit, Volkov with a couple left hands, repeatedly, but he didn't ever look like he was there for the win. It was almost like he did look gun shy. And Volkov capitalized on that quite heavily, and he looked phenomenal doing so. Of course, 6'7" is not often that Overeem steps into the cage with someone with such a height advantage on him. He did come in 10 pounds heavier as well. I wonder what the balance of the scales would have been, come fight night. Of course, again, you'd imagine it to be within that 10-pound limit, perhaps. But again, Volkov came in that first round, dominated the first round. Whatever he hit or threw at Alistair Overeem seemed to land, and it seemed to land with venom and power. And you thought, okay, it did remind me, maybe not on that level or that spectrum of Conor versus Alvarez. You just see it once they step in the octagon. It just seemed like one of those sort of nights where everything that Volkov threw came off, and rightfully so. He got the win. He deserved that win as well. And it's an important win for the whole division, really. Alistair Overeem has losses to Rosenstruck and Ngannou. Obviously, Volkov's got losses to, or he lost to Derek Lewis, albeit I'm sure that fight could definitely be rerun. It was only for the last 30 seconds of that fight. Volkov was winning, quite comfortably on the decision and on the scorecards. Now, of course, a couple of weeks from now, we've got Rosenstruck versus Ngannou. We've got, obviously, Lewis versus Blades coming up too. So you're looking at those two fights, the who fights Volkov next. If Rosenstruck beats Ngannou, you could easily see Rosenstruck versus Volkov. And similarly, if Blades, Blades demolished, then he demolished Volkov in a 5-round contest. So if Blades beats Lewis, which is a very viable option, you're probably looking at Rosenstruck Ngannou for Volkov's next opponent. But if Lewis wins, who knows? Maybe you rerun that. Yeah, it's a good fight. It's a good it's a good main event for a fight night card or an ESPN card, or it's a fantastic co-main event. Obviously, next month we've got Ngannou, tempting to capture the heavyweight title or a second attempt against Stipe Miocic, and that's where John Jones comes in. Obviously, you're expecting John Jones to be the next recipient of the heavyweight title challenge, and rightfully so. With the body of work he's done at light heavyweight, he deserves to come in. Probably the consensus greatest of all time. Maybe Khabib's in that conversation. GSP's certainly in that conversation. But many think that John Jones is at least skillfully the most skillful fighter we've seen in the octagon, and that body of work definitely puts him up there for a heavyweight title challenge. But to reflect on Saturday, Volkov put himself right in that mix, and we'll have a quick look at the results, of course. Not too many strikes, 10 out of 20 there for Overeem, and then 54 out of 88, all of them significant. Got that second round finish, a great stoppage by Jason Herzog, in my opinion. Overeem was, he'd already suffered a broken nose, he was heavily bleeding, and he'd taken a lot of damage in that first round. It was one of those ones almost like waving the white flag. I know Overeem wouldn't ever do that, but once he put both hands down on the mat, turned away from Volkov, it was almost like a get me out of here almost. And it'd be interesting to see what he says. He's been very respectful, but it'd be interesting to say in a week or two down the line, he comes out and go, right, I had this injury, this problem, because he just didn't show up. And it's not like he's not fought in the Apex before. I think he's had 2 performances in there. As maybe he had one in Jacksonville, then the Apex. But, he's certainly fought in an empty arena twice already. As has Volkov, and Volkov seemed to certainly make the most of it and look phenomenal doing so. But that moved him up to 33-8, of course, while Alistair Overeem comes down to 47-19. I say come down. That's a phenomenal record, 56 fights, or 66 fights professionally, should I say. But yes, unfortunately, he does go on his runs, only 2 wins and a loss. is his trajectory after Alistair Overeem has happened 3 or 4 times in a row now, which is unfortunate because each time he comes close to that, he's almost like a Donald Cerrone caliber, isn't he? With all due respect to Cerrone, each time he gets to the big stage and is that one fight away, a bit like Michael Bisping, although Michael Bisping did eventually, overcome that and became middleweight champion, of course, and the only British champion we've had. It seems like Alistair Overeem's in that ballpark and doesn't quite get, maybe the pressure's on him, doesn't quite get it done. But again, he doesn't lose any respect. It's more that Volkov comes out with his stock a little bit higher. And again, Rozenstruik or Gane, whoever wins that fight, I'd be quite happy seeing those two, those two compete with the Russian, probably in May or June now. Expecting them to have a couple weeks off and then back in training camp, maybe for July, August card, and perhaps maybe back on Fight Island at that point as well. But actually, let's actually not the bantamweight rankings. Let's have a look. At the heavyweight rankings, of course. But yes, you mentioned there Miocic and Ngannou at the top, Blades versus Lewis. So yes, for me, Alexander Volkov takes on Ngannou or Rozenstruik, whoever wins that battle. I'd like to see those two square off next. But yes, we'll move on to the bantamweight division and the co-main event. And oh boy, Cory Sandhagen, what a monster! Poor Frankie Edgar came in, on Saturday night, and he got kneed. One of those fine knees that's going to be replayed on the highlight reels. For many years to come. It was a performance. Well, I say a performance. It wasn't really. He didn't show a performance. It was more of a fantastic maneuver and a very phenomenal win. His second in, succession, and that wheel kick against Marlon Moraes, and now that flying knee against Frankie Edgar. He's putting on quite the body of work. Cory Sandhagen, bouncing back from that loss against Aljamain Sterling, albeit it was a very quick loss, a submission loss. So you could say that it's a loss on his record, albeit, but maybe quote unquote a fluke loss or one of those. It doesn't impact his stock. It's not like he got battered for 5 rounds and then came out of that loss against Aljamain Sterling on the back of the 50-45 card or something like that. It was a flush submission, a fantastic game plan from Aljamain Sterling. Was obviously going into that title fight against Petr Yan, and Cory Sandhagen was very adamant that he should be fighting next for it, and I agree. Now, he did mention TJ Dillashaw. And obviously, Dillashaw being the former champion does hold some weight. He obviously got suspended for EPO, but he's very much, I think, waiting for that title opportunity to come back. Now, if Aljamain Sterling wins, does that mean Petr Yan gets a second, sort of shot at rematch? Do you put Cory Sandhagen in there for a second time, knowing that Aljamain Sterling will be beaten quite easily, with all due respect? If Petr Yan wins, TJ Dillashaw, the former champ, maybe a passing of the guard. Personally, for me, depending on how that fight goes, Cory Sandhagen probably waits, or you book him against TJ Dillashaw for the number one contendership, you could say, and whoever wins that then goes on to fight Petr Yan or Aljamain Sterling. But again, Cory Sandhagen putting in a fantastic body of work. His highlight reel is going to look phenomenal. When he does hang out with those in 10 years, should he do so? But yes, fantastic flying knee. Only 28 seconds into the fight. I felt sorry for Frankie Edgar. He is a legend of the game. Sandhagen looked very sort of, whether it was an adrenaline dump, I don't know, but he came out after that flying knee, looked very down, looked very sort of not regretful, but he didn't enjoy that flying knee, so to speak. Jorge Masvidal enjoyed the flying knee and Ben Askren into oblivion, but you could see it was chalk and cheese, the two reactions from the fighters. Cory Sandhagen, showing his respect to a legend in Frankie Edgar, but knowing he just had to get the job done. And boy, did he get that job done. Take a look at the statistics. Only 4 strikes landed between the two. It didn't last very long, did it? Barely got out of the first minute. But yes, fantastic win there for Cory Sandhagen, and definitely put himself in contention for that title, maybe as number one contender. And we shall have a look at the rankings, of course. Mentioned there Yan and Sterling fighting for the title. TJ Dillashaw does come back into the mix somewhere. Whether we've seen him fight Cody Garbrandt already. TJ Dillashaw might have other divisions on his mind, whether it's featherweight getting on with his age now, or he wants another clean swipe at flyweight. But I think that'd be dangerous for him. I think bantamweight's his home, at least for that first fight back, at least. And he has earned the right to try and reclaim that title, of course. But yes, for me, certainly performance of the night, maybe the most shocking performance of the night. I actually missed the originally when it took place. It was typical. I turned away for 2 seconds, turned back at the TV, and obviously, Cory Sandhagen had got the job done. And the group chat was going off the chain. But yes, a very special knockout. And boy, we had Max Holloway last month. We had Dustin Poirier, we had Michael Chandler, and this month's continued in the same sort of vein with Cory Sandhagen and Alexander Volkov with those performances. And obviously, we've got UFC 258 next week, or this week now at the weekend with Usman and Burns. We could potentially see something equally as special on Saturday night. But yes, moving on to my fight tonight, it was Beneil Dariush versus Diego Ferreira. Should I say Diego Ferreira versus Dariush? Given Ferreira was in the red corner, but boy, did these two put on a spectacular performance. Obviously, Dariush coming out the winner and extending that winning record now to 6 wins in a row. Looked phenomenal. Both of them looked phenomenal. You could see the frustration from Dariush in his post-fight speech, saying that you got two guys in the top 10 fighting each other when they should probably have had separate opponents fighting more closely to the top 5. I think Dariush next, you put him up against Paul Felder or Dan Hooker, either one of those two would be a fantastic fight. But Dariush putting himself in the top 10 now, and certainly probably put himself on the hot horse for the division. He's still got some work to go to match the likes of the Tony Fergusons, Connors, Justin Gaethjes, and Michael Chandlers, who are the elite of that division. But he's certainly on his way there. And a win or two, he's certainly away from title contention, which he could certainly get by the end of 2021 as well. Only 31 years of age, coming into his prime, and he looked sublime against Diego Ferreira. Not saying Ferreira looked bad. I think both of them brought it on the night, knowing what was at stake. Just unfortunate for Ferreira that he was on the back end of a split decision loss, which, in my opinion, should have been a unanimous decision win anyway, for Beneil Dariush, of course. But taking a look at the decision, at the results, 74 strikes apiece, both of them bringing it on the night at 62 significant strikes for Dariush. You see he just slightly edged it with those 8 extra shots, 54 significant strikes there. For Ferreira, he had a slightly lesser percentage as well, connecting. And then obviously you've got 5 out of 15 takedowns, which was a personal best of Dariush. You can see exactly where the fight was won. And in my opinion, I thought the judges almost had a travesty, almost giving that one to Diego Ferreira there, with all due respect. But yeah, Beneil Dariush certainly put in a performance to be proud of, and to be comfortably in that top 10 of the division, which has become such a shark tank now. And yes, in my opinion, Dariush versus, if you're doing matchmaking now, Dariush versus Paul Felder would be for me, and then you do Ferreira Ally Quinton maybe, or Ferreira Kevin Lee. Those would be fantastic bouts, whether you make them 3 rounds or 5 rounds in a main event for a ESPN card maybe. Make sure to also hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to hit that follow button if you're watching on Twitch. Of course, we'll be doing a lot more content on Twitch in the near future, of course. And that moves us on nicely to this week's debutant in Manel Kape, who I thought disappointed himself. He came in with all the arrogance, all the confidence, and he probably should have got the win on Saturday night, but he didn't. I think whether that's him, it was his first walk into the UFC octagon, into those lights, into that stage, and obviously we've not been at that level, nowhere near that level. But I can imagine, you're probably looking to make a viral trend, you could say, or a viral video with what he could do. And he was showing off a little bit in there, and I thought that was a bit foolish from him. I thought he should have just focused on getting the job done. He's very capable. His skill set looked phenomenal in what he was doing so far, but he just wasn't throwing on that. Whether that was a bit of nerves, would it have been his debut? I don't know. But 15 of 5, 20 professional fights in your career, you'd be expecting, a lot more of a calm, collected performance. But again, everyone reacts differently, whether he had fans in the octagon. It reminded me a bit like Mikel Pereira. Pereira has all the talent and all the ability in the world, but sometimes he lets his showmanship get the better of him and let him down in performances. And I think maybe Kape was on the receiving end of that, because obviously Alexander Pantoja, being the UFC veteran in this case, he certainly put on a good performance. Didn't look the better fighter as a whole. He just looked a more complete and a more composed fighter on the night, and one that had been and had made that walk many times in the UFC, and that showed. I think he just got in there, got the job done, and albeit it wasn't the most spectacular performance, and I think Cape, if there had been maybe a second or third fight in the UFC, he's made that walk a couple of times. I think he could have quite easily won that fight, but unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. And we have to look at the results. Of course, 77 strikes there out of the 152, 51 to 94. His connection rate was phenomenal for Cape. It was just that he wasn't throwing enough, and you can see the output and velocity for Pantoja was what won him the fight in the end. 74 significant strikes out of 149, 49 out of 91, and obviously 2 takedowns there for Cape as well, which I think was in the third round. It's unfortunate. It's not one that's going to see him get cut immediately from the UFC. He definitely showed he belonged in there. But again, I don't know what it is. Closely we see the Conor McGregor's. We see these superstars showing. Masvidal is one of those that Adesanya, but they've been in there, got the job done, and you didn't really see him messing about in their first fight. He didn't. They got in there, wanted to make themselves known to the UFC, get the job done, and then once they're 2-3 fights, got their foot in the door at the UFC, then their sort of personality comes out and their ability to sell fights, ability to make those viral moments came out a bit more often. But I think if you're making a UFC debut, get in there, show what your skill set is, get the job done, and then maybe on the mic and in your second or third fight, start bringing out, your more cheeky, more personal, your more sellable side, so to speak. But yes, I'd be excited to see Kate back in there. Who against? I don't know now, because obviously he will be going in on a loss. Pantoja was 5th in the rankings. Maybe book him against Brandon Royval or Kai Kara France. I know they got, or at least Kai Kara France, they've got a fight coming up in a couple of weeks. I think on the Adesanya card, if I'm not mistaken. But again, I know Kate definitely deserves to be in the rankings now. Tim Elliott wouldn't be a too bad show against Cape. Someone who's a veteran, a big name, and someone you know is gonna bring a fight. But again, Cape didn't come himself to glory, and maybe that will be a learning curve for him. But again, deserves to be in the UFC and definitely deserves a second chance at getting his first UFC win. He's had a lot of success over at Rise, and I know the group chat that I'm in was buzzing to see him as well, and rightfully so. It's just so unfortunate that he didn't come himself in glory, as I mentioned, and the experience of Pantoja really poured through on the night. Now, of course, one very experienced fighter we know is obviously Clay Guida. He looked phenomenal on Saturday night, bouncing with energy. Even after the fight, it's crazy what he can do at 39 years of age. He was, he wouldn't stand still in his post like out to get interview, and he handed Michael Johnson his 4th defeat in a row, which probably spells the end for Michael Johnson, which is unfortunate because he has a fantastic resume, fantastic career, legendary career, but he's on a a tough slide now. He's not won since he beat Artem Lobov back in 2018. He's on 7 losses out of his last 10. That's cuttable. That's a cuttable sort of resume you're looking at there. If you want to add 2 more in there, 9 and 12, he is 9 losses in 12. And it's made his record look a bit shoddy now at 19 and 17. When you go distance with Khabib, he's got wins over Poirier and, of course, Edson Barboza. He's got wins over Tony Ferguson. That's a fantastic record to have. But he's almost letting it go now, whether it's time for him to say goodbye to the UFC, move on to a PFL. Maybe I thought he could look good in PFL or Bellator, but I think his time at UFC could be done. He is only 30, he's 34. He's come towards the end. He's been for a lot of mileage, you could say, 36 fights. But again, he's in that weird spell where he's losing too many fights now, and it's becoming a bit of an issue. But Clay Guida, equally back in the win column, was in a 2-fight loss streak in the UFC. His first win in 2 years since beating BJ Penn, of course. But he looked good. He looked energetic, and we have a look, of course, at the statistics. Of course, 70 strikes there for Johnson, 65 there for Guida, of course, 58 and then 49, and 3 takedowns really secured the victory for Clay Guida. But again, yes, I think this is a tough one to take for Michael Johnson, and probably we'll see the headline in a week or two that he's been cut from the UFC. We're seeing so many fighters signed from Contender Series from other organizations, and that does unfortunately mean that some of the old boys and some of the more household names in the UFC are going to eventually get cut and get withdrawn. And when you're on a 4-fight skid like that, it's not like he was on a 5-6 fight win streak before that either. Michael Johnson's on, walking on very thin ice at the moment. And yeah, I think that is maybe his last we've seen in the UFC. But again, not the end of his career. He didn't look that bad the way you're thinking he should be retiring. I just think he needs a new setting, maybe at PFL. That'd be the perfect one for me, at least. And I think that wraps up the main card. We'll have a quick look, of course, at the full results. As we mentioned there, of course, back in the win column. Well, actually, adding to the wins that he's had in 2020. Cory Sandhagen looking brilliant. They agreed at Alexander Pantoja, Dariush, all getting decisions, of course. Danilo Marquez opened up the main card, getting a phenomenal submission against Mike Rodriguez, and of course Jason Herzog referee in that one as well. It's brilliant stoppage. Obviously, Mike Rodriguez did go to sleep, and you see Jason Herzog, checking every second almost, making sure he's safe, and you see the way he dealt with that situation. I think Jason Herzog was probably the best. You don't get informed referees, but I'd say he's the most enjoyable referee to watch at the moment. He very rarely makes a mistake. He speaks multiple languages. He makes sure the fighter safety is the number one thing for him, and he showed that again. Obviously, Carol Rosa and Lara Procopio both got wins. One who can, brought up much speculation that she might be ending her fighting career, her phenomenal fighting career, the first English female to get a win in the UFC after laying their gloves down in the octagon. But of course, it was her late father's birthday, I believe. So that was the reason why she left them in the octagon. But they're still fighting the Scouser yet, and she's not calling time on her career, which is phenomenal to see from the UK point of things, and as a fight fan as a whole. Xingwu Choi also got a win against Yusuf Salal, a very fantastic decision win. Timur Valiev got a decision win against Martin Day. And Ode Osborne beat Jerome Rivera with a 27-second knockout. Fantastic way to open up the night. And, it was a good card overall. A lot of decisions, but again, the main and co-main certainly delivered, as did Dariush and Diego Ferreira, which was, for me, fight of the night. Let's have a quick look. Did they actually win fight of the night bonuses? They should have done. They deserve fight of the night bonuses. Yes, they did. And rightly so. Both of them got $50,000, as did Cory Sandhagen and Alexander Volkov. So yes, I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that follow button. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure to hit follow as well. We're closing it on 2K followers on there. And I will see you guys on Wednesday.